I'm ready. All right, guys. I think we finally made it. Welcome,
So you
and
gotta let
thank
me know when
you
I'm
so
on.
much for your patience. Welcome to the Being Special NYC.com 2016 Parent Boot Camp, Saturday, October 24th, 2015. Thank you, and my apologies. We had some technical difficulties to overcome, but I want to thank my tech team, which are my sons, who are accessing and assisting me remotely. We're trying to bring this thing into the 21st century. My name is Hazel Adams-Shango. I am the founder and CEO of BeingSpecialNYC.com and Advocate of
So you
Choice
gotta let me
Inc.
know when I'm on.
So we have
Oh no,
introductions
I messed
and
up.
announcements. Basically, I am Hazel Adams Shango, and I have a website, beingspecialnyc.com. And this website creation has been a dream for about 20 years. I've been working with parents since the mid 1990s. I've been working with my own children, and I've been a parent for approximately 30 years. And that is what I am doing now. So, as this is our first webinar, you may find that we have a little bit of the technical difficulties. I am trying to load, but here's my website, beingspecialnyc.com. You can go there for more information about me, and we'll get started. I apologize for the delay again. I'm going to try to stay on message, be very succinct in what I do. It's going to be a great opportunity. I'm going to help you navigate around the New York City public school system. Hopefully, our links will be working and we can go into some of the website links that I have there. Um, if you have any comments, there should be a chat section which my team will be monitoring. They'll be texting me your information. We will be taking a break in between. It's one thing people have said about these boot camps, Miss Hazel, they're very long, but that's the reason for the boot camp, because we're giving you a lot of information in a short period of time, but it's enough to get you start marinating about what's going to happen this school year for your child. I know how important that can be for some parents. You're going to hear about some new acronyms. We have ENL, English as a New Language. We're not using students with disabilities as much anymore. It's just diverse learners, and I'm all with that. So we're going to dive right in. BSP NYC, that's Being Special NYC, equals Advocate of Choice. Advocate of Choice is my actual business name, and I'm incorporated in the state of New York. I've been in business since July 2014. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience this last year and a half. And bringing you this webinar for the first time is also part of that experience. I began working with parents in 1997 formally. I was working on my master's degree project in community economic development. And so I was studying how parents of children with special needs or diverse learners could find economic alternatives to having their needs met. Oftentimes, when you have children in general, let alone a child who may have some type of medical condition or anything like that, oftentimes you need to have additional funding so that you can opt for a particular medicine when your health insurance doesn't want to cover it, or a specific kind of therapy. And so I started a parent group in Washington, D.C. It was called A Place in the Sun Parent Collective, and I used them as my focus group for my master's thesis. And after we finished the focus group, the parents wanted to continue to meet. And so that's kind of how I got started. Where I've been in New York City now for 15 years. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Um, and I lived in Washington, D.C. for approximately 12 years in our nation's capital. But everywhere I live, I try to build community. And when you have children, especially, you meet other parents. All the kids are going to different levels of schooling, elementary, middle, high school, nursery. And so you're just always engaged in that process. I've been a parent for 30 years. So I had my first child when I was 22 years old. And it has been quite quite a ride with the children. But again, my both of my sons are my tech support for today. And my youngest child, my daughter, had her 18th birthday yesterday. Yay. And she is a sophomore in college. And so I'm going to kind of share my narrative with you as we go through this process so that you can see how important your own narrative, your own story is, and your child's story is, and how we can figure out constructs and positive language and how to support them. Why do I do this? I do it for the people. I really do it for the people. As I said, my youngest child just had her 18th birthday. All of my kids have graduated from New York City public schools, have gone to college, attended college, and that was one of my main goals. I knew when my children were younger that if there was any way for them to study beyond the high school level, I wanted to make that happen. And I had a really great advocate when I was going through things with my children. She also happened to be extended family. Her name was Jennifer Detweiler, who has made her transition several years ago. But she was just a stellar individual. She was a speech and language pathologist by profession, went on to become a federal monitor of special education programs across the country. And so she shared with me and supported me and walked me through the process in the early 1990s of just being a more consistent and a more positive parent. And how did I get this experience? Employment, education. I have an associate's degree in early childhood education from New York University. I received my master's degree in community economic development from New Hampshire College, and I actually received my master's before my bachelor's degree. I was waived into the program because of my life experience and work experience and what I actually brought to the table. And then I had to back out. I was thinking about law school, and you can't go to law school without a bachelor's degree. So I have my bachelor's degree in psychology from the College of New Rochelle, and I actually have 60 plus credits in the areas of school psychology and mental health counseling. I haven't completed that dual degree program. I need to finish the internships. But how I spend my time now is really just helping parents, supporting my children. I have one grandson who's 5.5 now, and this is what's happening. So throughout this webinar, I am going to continue to use this who, what, when, where, why, and how method. So the run of the show. We thought we were going to be in there at 9 a.m. and my kids made a great point. They were like, "Mom, who's up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday?" And I said, "Parents." Because if you're up with your children and you get up during the work week or during the school week, it's usually 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. But in future endeavors, you will actually just be able to access through my YouTube channel and through a very special platform that some interns at Lehman College are constructing for me right now, which will have a series of parent e-learning modules that you'll be able to access 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year. So this is just the very first trial run of the module. Part 1, are you ready for the 2015-2016 school year? We'll try to spend a half an hour on that. Part 2, New York Public School Systems Navigation, 9:40 to 10:20. We'll have a brief coffee break, and we'll move to part 3, special education. I know a lot of parents are waiting for that. Access and functional needs of students. We're changing some of the language. Again, students with disabilities, no, they're just students who have access and functional needs. They're diverse learners. We're using people first language today, meaning we put the student first, the person first, and then whatever attributes we like to attach to them. So it's never special education kids or my child, my autistic child. It's always a child who's been diagnosed with autism, a child who has challenges with reading, a child. People first. Put the person first. And then part 4, how to survive and thrive in New York City public schools. That's really quick. It's just a few links that I like to show you, and hopefully we'll have enough bandwidth so that we can kind of move through the program. Of course, the times will be adjusted, but we're going to try to stick to that allotted time that we've set aside. So, are you ready for the 2015-2016 school year? Well, you're already here. School started, public schools, New York City public schools started on September 9th, 2015, and we're already at the end of October this week. So, report cards should be coming out very, very soon, first week in November. For some parents of children who have individualized education plans and programs, IEPs, you met in September, in mid-September at the school. Many schools have already had meet and greet. We've had the citywide high school fair. We're in middle school. And that's why I always hold the back to school parent boot camp in October. In September, everyone's running around, very busy. By mid-October, you've settled in, and now it's like, hey, where are we going with this? We've got homework, we've got projects, and the holidays are coming. Last October, we held our first fall parent boot camp at Lehman College in the faculty dining hall. We were able to tape that. We're gonna ramp that up on a video. So I've taken some bits and pieces from that presentation last year, produce some current things for you now, and also from other presentations that I do for parent associations, for parent groups, for PTAs. So it should be a very interesting experience. So the reason I put Chancellor's regulations, high school graduation, mayoral control, and the first part of school choice in this first section is because I wanted to give parents, especially those who have students who are in high school, or if you have a child who's in 12th grade and you're listening or you're viewing this, it's very important. October is a critical month in the school year cycle for everyone, but especially for graduating high school seniors, especially for 5th graders who are going through middle school choice, especially for 8th graders who are going through high school choice. So I just wanted to bring everybody kind of like up to date. Chancellor's regulations are really important. Here's the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Our chancellor now is Carmen Farina. I don't have the little accent that actually needs to go over the I in her name. She is well-steeped educator in the New York City public school system. She was actually deputy chancellor prior to Mayor Bloomberg entering, and then soon thereafter she did retire, and now she's back. What does the chancellor do? The chancellor's formal title is she's actually one of several formal titles. She's the superintendent of the New York City Public School District. So she's actually a superintendent also in her role. Now, chancellors came about. There's a long history in New York City of chancellor or boards of education, but in 1969, Mayor John Lindsay gave up mayoral control and started the Board of Education. The chancellor's office is at 52 Chambers Street in Manhattan in the old Tweed Courthouse. And why do we need a chancellor of a Board of Education? And I guess you remember from President George W., but we need a decider. There has to be that ultimate educational leader that's going to decide how the business and administration of public education is going to be conducted in New York City. We need the person who has the final decision, has the final sign off. And how did the whole chancellorship come about? Again, Mayor John Lindsay ceded mayoral control, and Mayor Bloomberg actually brought back mayoral control. So it's not, mayoral control isn't anything new. Now, in the Chancellor's regulations, there are 95 regulations, and there are 4 volumes of these regulations. So Volume A addresses student-related issues from admissions to promotion, and there are 50 regulations in Volume A. In Volume B, addresses school-based budgeting issues. There's only one there. In Volume C, addresses employee issues from hiring to termination. There are actually 36 regulations under Volume C. And in Volume D, it addresses parent and community involvement. There are 8 regulations there. It's very important. We're going to talk about parent involvement. This is the beginning of your parent involvement, parent education, parent training. It's very important. Let's see if this link is going to work for us while we're doing the stream. I'm sorry for any delays. Very good. We're opening up. So part of what I wanted to do in this webinar is actually show New York City public school parents how to navigate the New York City public school website, which is located at schools.nyc.gov. So as you can see, under Chancellor's Regulations, you can find it on the left-hand side under Rules and Policies. We have the series A100, and that stands for the 101, the actual regulation number. That A101 is a very important regulation. It regulates admissions, readmissions, and transfers, and list notices. List notice is how a child gets moved to another school upon promotion. And so that's what all the school choice processes lead to, so that by the end of June, your child's files and records go over to the next school that they've been assigned to, or that through the school choice process. But you can see here there are a number of regulations on home instruction. Home instruction is when a child is expected to have a medical condition that will last 6 weeks or longer, more than 6 weeks actually. And they will have a licensed and certified teacher come to your home for X number of hours a day. It changes for elementary school students versus middle school students versus high school, because each group of those students need to have a certain number of classroom or face-to-face hours with their teacher. But home instruction is very different from homeschooling. Homeschooling is when parents elect to school their children at home. It's not for a medical reason. It could be for a medical reason, but home instruction is always medical. Whether there are emotional or psychiatric issues, whether the child has had a bad break of their leg and the healing is going to take over 2 months, and there are various surgeries. I've known of students while I served as an enrollment officer with the New York City Department of Education for about 7.5 years in the Manhattan borough, of children that have just had various medical conditions that really warrant the home instruction. We've got rules on zoning lines, school utilization. That's important because only a certain number of people can be in each and every school. Certain number of adults, certain number of children, certain number of staff, the building engineers. All of those numbers are monitored very heavily by the DOE. Employment certificates, kids can get working papers. Behavioral crisis de-escalation, intervention and contacting 911. That's Chancellor's Regulation A411. That's a very big regulation because a lot of parents of children with certain challenges, behavioral challenges, have complained in the past that the school calls 911 when they feel that they can't assist the child or help the child to come back into control, those types of things. But you have to be very careful in calling 911. There's actually a de-escalation process that's outlined And again, cell phones, hot button topic, verbal abuse, pupil behavior and discipline. Chancellor's Regulation A420, very important. So that you know what is permitted, what types of behavior are permitted or not permitted in the public school system. So these are ways that you can educate yourself about what the rules and regulations are, the rules of engagement when you start engaging as a parent within the public school system. You need to be able to understand what are the regulations that monitor everything. So we're going to hop out of there. High school graduation requirements. Now, the reason this is important, and again, in my work as enrollment officer, I've also worked as a parent engagement officer when the school system, New York City public school system, were in regions. I'd often ask high school parents, they come in, and I'd say, do you know how many credits you need to graduate from New York City public school? They would say no. Some are native New Yorkers, some graduated. It's been a long time since they've been in school. Many parents are newcomers, they're from other countries, they were educated in other places, and so they're not very familiar. One guide that I use very much so is called the High School Academic Policy Reference Guide. Now, this guide should really be used, and it is a guide for the education professionals in the New York City public school system. But because I like to do research and I read very heavily, it's something that I understand. I have a background in education. So there is something that I always caution parents at each of my speaking events. A little bit of information is dangerous. Don't think that you could just dive into this guide and understand and fathom everything that's involved in the high school situation. People go and get master's degrees and study for years, and it's still really only through combining the work with the education, with the experience over many years, that you're able to actually kind of digest much of the information and data that you may have access to. So, but this is a very interesting guide because it really outlines, you can see from the table of contents, the Regents exams, many things. This guide was updated last spring, April 2015. Right before graduation was to occur. So that's very interesting in and of itself. But it had to be updated to realign with the Common Core standards and the changes that were taking place in testing, in Regents exams testing, in alternate assessment. We'll talk more about that later. You can see the diploma options, the CUNY admissions requirements. Because ultimately, whether you're a parent right now of a preschooler, kindergarten K through 2, grades 3 through 5, middle schools grades 6 through 8, or high school grades 9 through 12, ultimately you want your child to graduate from high school. That's why it's important for younger parents or parents of children in the earlier grades even to understand, what are we working towards in first grade, in second grade. Ultimately, it's towards high school graduation and living the most independent life as a young adult that you can. And your public school experience is a key anchoring part of that. So they have graduation requirements here, the required credits. They go into how you achieve the credits. So when they say English Language Arts, ELA, 8 credits. So every semester in high school, you get a credit. There are some high schools that only give the credit once a year. There are other high schools that give the credit at the end of January and the end of June. So if I take 4 years of English, that's what you need in high school. Then I get 1 credit, English 9, semester 1, and I get another credit in June, English 9, semester 2. So that's 2 credits of English that I have, and you do that for 4 years. So if you are a parent who's listening now or viewing this webinar now, and your child is preparing to enter high school, you want to ask, one of the questions you want to ask the one of the questions you want to ask the school is, do you grant credits on an annual basis? Meaning I'll receive grade reports all through the school year, but I won't earn the credit until June. Or do you offer credits mid-year and end of year? Let's see, social studies, 8 credits. You need 4 years of history. You'll have 2 years of global history, and one in ninth grade, one in 10th grade. For 11th grade, U.S. history. And then in senior year, participation in government for the first semester, economics second semester. Sometimes schools have economics first, they have different offerings, but you need 4 years of history. 6 credits, you need 3 years of math. You're going to earn Algebra 1 credit, first semester, Algebra 1 Part 2 in the second semester. That's 2 credits in ninth grade, 2 credits in 10th grade. Take a look here. High school technology education courses may be used to fulfill the remaining 2 credits in mathematics or science, but not both. So you high school parents, if your child's not really great in math, they are going to have to take those first 2 years, but the 3rd year of math could actually be a technology education course. And it goes on, it goes on. On science, you need 3 years in order to graduate. And 2 of those years have to be in a science that has a laboratory, a lab assigned to it. The 3rd year of science could again be one of those technology courses, something else. Language other than English, you need 1 year of a foreign language. But note here, and this is for parents of children with diverse learning needs, disabilities, a student with a disability may be exempted from meeting the LOTE, languages other than English, requirement if and only if his or her IEP, that's the Individualized Education Plan, indicates that the requirement is not appropriate due to a disability that adversely affects his or her ability to learn a language. So again, for high school parents and for middle school parents whose children are going to be transitioning to high school within the next year or 2, you have to remember on that IEP, if you have a language-based learning disability, that your child might not pick up a foreign language as well, and you wouldn't want that to be the only class that they're missing in order to graduate. And sometimes that happens. It happens with that, and it happens with gym, physical education a lot. Need 7 semesters of gym. There are no waivers or exemptions for physical education requirements. Temporary medical conditions, the 504 plan, we'll talk a little bit about that. You need 1 semester of health. You need a class in health. That's very important. And 2 credits in the arts. You could take music, you could take theater, visual arts. So the high school requirements are pretty much laid out there. So who, what, when, where, why, and how. All New York City public high school students have high school graduation requirements. You need basically 44 credits, and you need to pass 5 Regents exams. When students can stay in school and or access New York City Department of Education programs until June of their 21st year. What do I mean by that? If your child's birthday is in October, this October, today, and your child is in high school right now and turns 21 today, has their 21st birthday today, this June 2016 will be the last year that they will receive public school services from the New York City public school system. However, say that your child's 21st birthday falls in August. If your child's 21st birthday is this August, they actually can stay in school till June of 2017. They can attend school next September for 1 more year, because July 1st is the beginning of the school year. Not September 1st, not July 1st is that date that they use to distinguish between birth dates and your 21st year. Where? Any public high school. Why? Why do kids need to graduate from high school? So they can move forward in life. We're in the 21st century. We've got a lot of technology around, but most jobs, most employment opportunities, and even more so in the past than now, at a minimum, you needed a high school diploma, or what they formerly called a GED, a general education diploma through testing. But you needed to show that you could complete this. That's why completing high school is so important. And so if you're a parent of a younger student, of a fifth grader, of a seventh grader, it's never too early to talk to your children and counsel your children about what the next phase is for them, or what's going on, or when you're traveling on the weekend. See, there's DeWitt Clinton High School, there's Millennium High School, there's Long Island City High School. Do you know what they do in high schools, especially for the younger kids? They know that that's where the big kids go, but you can start talking to them now. And how do you successfully graduate high school? And I have to say, after being a parent for 30 years of my three wonderful children, all of whom have graduated from New York City public schools, but very different types, they must attend school regularly. And attendance is it's a big challenge in New York City. Parents have to commute, have to be to work at a particular time. As children get older, if they're not as successful in their first 2 years of high school, usually most school leavers, formerly called students who would drop out of high school, it usually happens between 10th and 11th grade, because they can't see the end goal. They don't see why they're doing all this work and what it actually leads to, because parents have to talk to them about college. You have to start talking to them. Or what I did more so with my children is showing them, hey, let's look at a classified ad for a job. Or now with them, let's go online and look at idealist.org, or what you need to be in order to be an engineer. Well, you need a bachelor's degree in engineering. How do you get a bachelor's degree in engineering? You have to attend college. How can you get into college? You have to graduate from high school or have the equivalency, the high school equivalency. So sometimes you look at the larger goal when you're talking to your children, and then you work backwards with them. Well, my goal is to own my own business. Well, how do you do that? We need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. And that becomes your checklist. Kids have to work hard. Now, for some kids, schoolwork comes very easy. For other children, handling the workload of high school, even of middle school, it becomes very challenging. So they have to be well organized. They have to set aside time, not only to do homework, but to study. And I'm developing a whole e-module series just on studying and note taking, and the difference between homework and studying, and preparing yourself. And parents, when kids come home, you have any homework? No. Well, my father used to say, there's always homework. If there's no homework, you need to study. You need to brush up. Or you need to read that chapter again. You need to go back and review. And also, how do you graduate from high school? You know what your rights and responsibilities are, which means you need to know you need 44 credits to graduate, how many classes in each area, all of those things. And this is how all of this ties together. So in the 2013-2014 school year, the New York State Education Department, that's NYSED, Board of Regents began the process of aligning the existing English Language Arts, ELA, and mathematics exams, the Regents exams, and also the exams that the children take from grades 3 through grades 8, the state exams, to the Common Core. So this all started in the 2013 school year. So there's still a local diploma, but for safety net eligible students. Students with individualized education plans, IEPs, students with Section 504 plans that specify safety net eligibility, students with disabilities declassified while in grades 8 through 12, whose last IEP specified safety net eligibility. You keep saying, what's the safety net? We're going to talk about it. Students with certain combinations of Regents appeals. Appealing is very important. Students with a successful English language learner appeal. Students with 2 low score appeals on Regents exams. Now, the local diploma is only issued to the students who are now currently in high school who entered high school up to September 2011. So if you have a high school student that may be probably 19 or 20 years old now, and they entered high school in September 2011 with their what we call their cohort, their group that they entered kindergarten with, those were the last kids and those are the last students who are going to be eligible for the local diploma. For eligible students entering ninth grade prior to September 2011 only. So they started phasing out the local diploma in 2011. And these kids, they could pass any of the following Regents competency tests, the RCTs: reading, writing, mathematics. But if your child started high school, let me see, 2011, 2012, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14, 15. So no, you had to start high school September 2010 to be eligible for the local diploma. Sometimes it takes students 5 or 6 years to finish high school. That's not unusual. You'd like for them to be able to finish in 4 years, but that doesn't always happen. And students may have illnesses. Kids experience a lot of social anxiety and stress in high school, and so it may take them a couple of more years. So any student who entered the New York City public high school system from September 2011 on must pass 5 Regents. They do not have access to this local diploma. They have access to Regents diploma. You have to earn the 44 credits and score 65 or above on 5 required Regents exams or department approved alternatives: English language arts, any science, any math, any social studies, and 1 additional. So you're going to take the English Regents. You can take any science, you could take an earth science regent, you could take a biology regent, whatever your school's offering, any mathematics, you could take algebra regents, trigonometry, geometry, calculus, any social studies, U.S. history, global, and 1 additional. Generally, they did 1 global, and then the 1 additional would be the 1 U.S. history regent. But there are other regents that you can take in the foreign language. 4+1 option, Regents exams, exceptions to the 5 exams. So if your child's in high school right now, this pertains to you. Students who have to appeal 1 Regents exam, you can score 65 as passing in a regent, but if a child on the algebra regent scores a 63, they can still earn a Regents diploma if it's only on 1 Regents exam and if you appeal it. You start the appeal process there at the school with the principal. It'll go on to the superintendent. Students who have fulfilled 1 or more exam requirements using a portfolio assessment from a New York City approved school may earn a Regents diploma. So there are schools who we call them a coalition of 100 essential schools. There are certain schools, high schools, where kids can portfolio the U.S. history, the global history, and the sciences. They take the English language arts regent and the math regent always, such a city as school. But the other 3 Regents exams, they have permission from New York State Ed. And that approval, that's that coalition of 100 essential schools. Students who transfer to New York State schools in grades 11 or 12 and waive specific Regents exams may earn a Regents diploma if they pass all other exams above. So oftentimes I would see when I worked in the enrollment office, you have newcomers, kids who are coming from West Africa, who are coming from the Caribbean, who are coming from California, and they're entering the New York City public school system for the first time. for the first time. And that's something that's important about this statement in grades 11 or 12. Well, it's kind of unfair to ask them at mid-year or towards the end of their high school life. Now you have to assimilate to our system. So they do usually waive a history for the students that are coming from out of country or out of state for the first time. There's an Advanced Regents Diploma. I know we're getting long here. You still need the 44 credits, and at least you can do 6, but you need 6 Regents exams, and you can use a language other than English, and 3 additional elective credits. You need a 65 or above on 9 exams in the following areas: ELA, 3 math exams, algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 trig, any social studies exam, 2 science exams, and any additional. You could do that in a foreign language. So for the Regents Diploma, you need 44 credits and 5 exams. For an Advanced Regents Diploma, you're going to have to do 9 exams. And some people want that extra endorsement. It's like a stamp, an embossment. Sometimes it could be a gold star, a gold emblem. And it helps you navigate it and get to a state university of New York. It shows a higher standard that you reached beyond the general high school graduation standard. There are also other endorsements for CTE, that's Career and Technical Education, what parents would generally call vocational high schools. If you go into automotive high school, and you also come out with some technical training, you'll receive that endorsement or embossment. But I'm going to do a whole series just on high school. This is way too much to digest at once, but you have the local diploma for kids who started high school before September 2011. You have the Regents Diploma. You need 44 credits and pass 5 exams. You have the Advanced Regents Diploma. You need 44 credits and pass 9 exams. Now, for students who are working with IEPs, they have now created the Career Development and Occupational Studies Commencement Credential. This credential can only be awarded to a student with an IEP. It can be awarded as an endorsement on any diploma or as a student's sole exiting credential. So there's students where their learning challenges are so deep that they do not pass all 5 Regents exams. They may not pass 1 Regents exam, but they've done the 44 credits. They've tried their very best, and their participation should be noted. It's not a regular or general high school diploma, but it is a credential, CDOS. Note that a student with a disability must be provided with appropriate opportunities to earn an Advanced Regents, or local diploma, including providing a student with meaningful access to participate. So oftentimes on IEPs of high school students who have learning differences, diverse learning needs, one of the 13 conditions that are covered under the federal law for students with disabilities, you will see they'll continue to put Regents Diploma as the goal. But at a certain point, as a parent, you need to assess, is this goal going to be met? We've reached for it, but are we actually going to reach this goal? Is he actually going to pass the English Language Arts Regents exam if he's reading on the 4th grade level? You have to be the RCTs, the Regent Competency Test. You had to read even at least at an 8th grade level to get through the RCTs. So schools must program students with disabilities to progress towards earning a diploma throughout high school, regardless of whether they are also working on the CDOS. Meaning that as the child moves through their high school life, they may fail Algebra 1, but we still have to continue to program you for Algebra 2, and we have to offer you adequate makeup services for Algebra 1. Students who successfully complete the graduation requirements and CDOS requirements will earn the CDOS credential. And there'll be a certain endorsement on the diploma, a little emblem, sometimes it's a seal. And the final credential that can be earned is the Skills and Achievement Commencement Credential. It can only be awarded to a student with an IEP who does not participate in standard assessments and is New York State alternate assessment eligible. So that usually, alternate assessments you'll usually find with students who are participating in District 75 specialized programs. And we know that from their particular learning challenge or diversity, that if I'm reading at the second grade level and I'm 17, I'm 19 years old, I may not be passing that English language arts, but I can show you through a portfolio, through an alternate assessment method, that I have mastered what's on my IEP from my own personal individual goals. This is what people probably used to call an IEP diploma. And you can't per se enter a formal college program with this credential, but things may be changing, because if they're offering the credentials, this and the CDOS, at the state level, then the state will also be making adjustments as they move along as to how to give all students access to post-secondary, to college level learning, or having that college experience. Starting on July 1st, 2013, students with severe disabilities only who are eligible to take the New York State alternate assessment. Upon reaching the end of school year in which the student turns 21, this is how you can earn this credential, or upon application of the student or his parent or guardian at the completion of at least 12 years of schooling, excluding kindergarten, and they may update that now since they're trying to make kindergarten in quotes mandatory. In New York State, kindergarten is not mandatory. In New York City, in that Chancellor's Regulations A101, they talk about kindergarten being mandatory, and if the parent doesn't want the child to participate in kindergarten, they just have to notify the school district and let them know. So you have to stay in school at least 12 years. And students have to stay in school, must attend school until June of their 17th year. So kids who are 16 years old, oh, I want to take the high school equivalency exam, I don't want to go back to high school. No, you must be in school legally until June of your 17th year. So if you don't turn 17 until this May, you have to stay in school the rest of this school year. You may not have to return in September because June of your 17th year has passed. And you need at least 12 years of schooling if you're on alternate assessment, so that we've given the child a full pathway to every educational advantage from first grade to 12th grade. Whew, that was a lot, and we're going to keep moving right along. Mayoral control of public schools. The reason that I put this information up front was because that's what we're living under right now, and it actually expired June 30th, 2015. After Mayor Bloomberg made an agreement with the state legislature, they changed laws, they did a whole lot of things in order to change the control from the Board of Education to mayoral control. Now, Diane Ravitch is a professor at NYU. She has written books and spoken on different talk shows. She is an expert in her field of public education history. And so this was an interview she had with Bill Moyers. And there were just certain aspects of the interview I thought were important when it dealt with charter schools.
This week on Moyers and Company, the high cost of turning our schools into profit centers.
In terms of the public coffers, there are billions of dollars, but I think what's at stake is the future of American public education. I believe it is the foundation stone, one of the foundation stones of our democracy. So an attack on public education is an attack on democracy.
And so, If you can go to YouTube and you can look up Miss Ravitch, she speaks on this one, though, a little bit more about charter schools and the corporate investment
Funding is
that folks are making in charter schools.
There's also the power of the federal government. Our Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, put out $4.3 billion called Race to the Top, and he said to the states, you can't be eligible for any part of this money unless you lift your cap on charter schools. So suddenly, the lure of getting that federal money made many states change their laws to open the door to many, many more charter schools. So that's really what's driven the increase in charters. But what the other thing that's driven them is that there is a tremendous political force of very wealthy hedge fund managers who are investing in the charter school industry.
Now, isn't that interesting? So you can pick up this video through YouTube. You can look up Professor Diane Ravitch. And she just has some very interesting opinions on opting out of testing, charter schools, where the public school system should really be moving. So mayoral control, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Mayor de Blasio's here now. And what did he say about mayoral control of the public schools when it was about to expire June 30th, 2015? He asked the state assembly for permanent mayoral control. It did expire on June 30th, 2015 in New York City. Why do we really want mayoral control, and why did Mayor Bloomberg work so hard for that? So I've talked to a lot of parents, and they mentioned when we had the former Board of Education, and these were representatives that were publicly elected, that there was corruption, and there was graft, and there were all these things. But under mayoral control, we have a panel for education policy, and most of the members are appointed by the mayor. So they're going to push forth whatever the mayor's policies are on education. The state assembly went ahead and approved 2 more years only of mayoral control, which will last Mayor de Blasio till the end of his term. It's interesting to note, though, that in the next mayoral election, you may actually have an individual who throws their hat in the ring, and education, public education, is always one of those main hot points, hot topics. And if they happen to be running a particular charter school network, then, and they run for mayor and win, because they already have several thousand parents of the students that they're educating, then you'll see more and more charter schools coming on board. And it's the privatization of public education. Maybe it's an economic necessity, maybe not. There's still more to debate. Math scores overall in New York City, whether it's charter school or community public school, they're very low. We still need to push for that on a national level. But the whole concept of mayoral control is just very interesting. One thing that I did like when we had Chancellor Klein, that he could only do it for 1 year because it was very expensive, but there was 1 year while he was chancellor that he made sure that every incoming kindergarten student was screened for gifted and talented. And I thought that that was a very good tool. There are pros and cons, because not only did they offer the G&T testing to every kindergartner, they also utilized another assessment tool called the Bracken, which really measures school readiness in young children. How ready are they for school? So we know that if you give your child early childhood education opportunities, that it's highly predictable, that they'll do much better as they move through their school life, those kinds of things. There are plenty of studies, journal articles, things of that nature. But I thought that it was interesting. So on the pro side, you can identify children with intellectual giftedness. There are other types of giftedness, but intellectual giftedness at a very early age, and get them on the right track. And you can also identify children who may not score as high in school readiness and intervene earlier for them than 3rd grade, than 5th grade. And so but also other educators and parents said, hey, but that's a way to track our kids. So if I'm testing you in kindergarten and you have a bad day that day, and then your results on this testing get you tracked towards this intervention that you might not have even necessarily needed. It was just a very bad day, bad test day, and then you're set on that path throughout your school life. So there are pros and cons. So 1969, Mayor John Lindsay here in New York City ceased mayoral control and formed the Board of Education. And in 2002, Mayor Bloomberg reinstated mayoral control and created the Panel for Education Policy, PEP, and it's still here. Now, there are other U.S. cities that have public school systems under mayoral control. And Jackson, Mississippi, back in the 1950s, it predates the current trend. This was some of the information that I shared with parents at last year's Parent Boot Camp. Boston, Mass. in 1991, Chicago, 1995. So, just going back for you. New York 2002, Rhode Island, and Washington, D.C. finally in 2007. So just keep your eye on the whole mayoral control issue. Perhaps between now and the second year, there may be a referendum that we can put on up during an election day to say, you know, we don't want mayoral control. We want to go back to voting people in. And we'll see how it works from there. Just keep it on your mind, though. It's food for thought. All right, school choice processes part 1. Here's the link to schools.nyc.gov. That's the New York City Public School website. Let's enlarge this. Okay, so when you go to schools.nyc.gov, you can go on the left-hand side and it'll say choices and enrollment. The middle school directories are out. They have each area for pre-K, gifted and talented, new students, transfers, middle school, high school directories out. We have high schools. So for pre-K, I know that some parents wrote in questions about pre-K. You can go to the website, go under pre-K. They have events. They have web resources. The same for elementary school. The same for middle school, high school, G&T. So let's look at pre-K, pre-K for all. Opportunity starts now. They have some videos. You can have full day or half day pre-K. Will I remain in the main round list? Wait list if I apply in round 2? Yes, you will remain on main round program wait list if you don't get your first choice. Even if you participate in round 2. How can I learn more about pre-K centers? A pre-K center is a program operated by the DOE that exclusively serves pre-K students. And the centers offer free, full-day, high-quality pre-K. Where are the centers located? In existing school districts. There are dual language programs for pre-K. I did receive a question via email about a foreign language immersion program for students. We're going to get into that a little later. We have a link that you can reach that'll show you all of the dual language and ELL programs in the city. Okay. And let's just look at kindergarten, because I know that's a hot topic for many, many parents. Now they've moved up. The kindergarten application is going to open up on December 7th, 2015. It's about a month in advance from last year. Generally, the DOE timelines and school choice processes kind of remain the same, at least with regards to months, every year, because everything has to culminate by on or before June 30th of that school year. And so you like to have all high school matches, all middle school matches, kindergarten, pre-K. You like to have everything settled by June so that the child over the summer knows which school. Students with disabilities. All community schools in New York City serve students with disabilities. Transitioning to kindergarten, they're having information sessions. There's an orientation letter that you'll receive. They send notices to parents. An orientation guide. The guides are here in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 languages. I really like that. And that's something that the New York City Public Schools have been very responsive, much more responsive of now. Haitian Creole, Urdu, Russian, Korean, Chinese, Bengali, they really are responding. There's further information if your child has been diagnosed along the autistic spectrum. These ASD Nest and ASD Horizon programs serve some students with autism spectrum disorder. You have to have functionally accessible schools programs. Click here. These show you schools for students that have um, for students that have for students that have orthopedic impairments. You have to be able to have access to the buildings. Students who use wheelchairs. And so if you go down here, a list of functionally accessible schools. Okay, and you can see schools.nyc, accessibility. You can always just search accessibility right there. We click on Manhattan, and we allow. Sorry about that. Calls coming in while we're talking. And even though this is very small for you, it shows you every accessible school, whether they have a pre-K or not, the street address, partially accessible, fully accessible with a ramp, elevators, things of that nature. Okay. So just to let you know, they offer you a lot of information on their website. But it's about kind of navigating, learning how to read through it. So what's the difference? Between enrollment, registration, and admissions. Enrollment means that you're eligible to submit documents to come into the school. Registration, you're actually going to bring the forms in and try to absorb that spot. When you're admitted to a school, you actually have a seat in the school. There is a physical seat for you. So just because you register for a school, kids register for school all the time and they don't show up. But you're admitted once the child sits for one full school day. So enrollment, what I used to have enrollment offices, now family welcome centers. They're encapsulated within the family welcome center. I worked as, again, an enrollment officer for many, many years. You have to be eligible to enroll in a New York City public school. You need to be a resident. When you're enrolling a student, you need to make sure that the student is with you when you're going to enroll a student and you're going to a family welcome center for enrollment. They don't necessarily have to be there for transfers, to discuss transfers with an officer, things of that nature. When they're high schoolers, it's helpful to see the student or to be able to have a conversation, middle schoolers and high schoolers. But to enroll, the child must be present. So we're going to talk about the types of schools and programs. We're going to talk about children with special needs. We'll talk about priorities for admissions, application schools, charter schools. We can, have that open discussion. Are there any questions that are coming up on the board? I'm going to talk to a couple of my tech assistants here because I have the one screen, don't have the two screens, and see if we can get some questions up. So they are basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, generally school types. There's your zone school that's in your community that's drawn up based upon census tracts, actually. So the 2020 census is going to be a very big issue as far as zoning is concerned. So you should see that changing over when we get to 2020. So if you have a first grader now or you have a 2-year-old now, zoning may change in your area by 2021. Based upon that 2020 census, you have non-zone schools. There's a whole group of schools now that you just don't, it's not based upon where you live. They have different priorities. They may have an application that you have to fill out. There are district schools that are open to any student who's in that district. Um, we have borough-wide schools open to any student who lives in that borough, given priority. We have citywide gifted and talented programs, and some citywide, and of course high school is citywide choice. You can go to high school in any of the 5 boroughs. District 75 programming, they're not actually schools, but they're programs because it is a separate school district that has a separate line of funding. Primarily, many students that attend District 75 programs have more significant learning challenges, physical challenges, medical challenges, that kind of thing. And you have homeschooling, which is an option. My last count, there were probably maybe 4,000 or 5,000 families in New York City, citywide, that deal with homeschool. There is a director of homeschool, and their office is located at 333 7th Avenue. That's also the location of the Manhattan Borough Operations Center at this point. But there's a one point person that manages all the homeschooling issues. If you're interested in homeschooling your child, you have to write a letter of intent to homeschool to the DOE, drop it off at the homeschool office. Within 10 days, that director of homeschooling will send you a packet. And inside of that packet will explain to you the New York State education regulations that govern homeschooling. It'll have sample forms of how you can keep your child's attendance, because when you're homeschooling, you're opting to school your child at home. We now have online programs like K through 12 and other homeschooling options. You just have to make sure, if you're using the online programs, that they are accredited for this Northeast region. Or even if they're accredited in the Southeast region or the Western region out in California, but they must be an accredited program. And especially for high school students. Now, you can homeschool in high school, but you as a parent cannot give your child credits through high school homeschooling, because in order to earn those 44 credits, really 22 Carnegie units, it's a unit that they use to equate number of hours of time the high schooler has with a licensed and certified teacher. So generally, I'll slow down a little bit. Parents who want to homeschool their children during the high school years, you need to sign up with an accredited online program that's going to be able to issue your child a high school diploma. Parent as teacher for high school, the parent cannot give the student high school credits. But if you want to homeschool K through 8, it's perfectly fine. The parents issue their own children their own grades. When you get that packet from homeschooling, it's also going to have something called an IHIP, IHIP, and it's an individual home instruction program, and you have to say which textbooks you're using, what curriculum you're following, but I'll have a module on that just alone. So school choice timelines. For kindergarten, applications will open in December 7th through January 15th. Offers sent to families in mid-March, a month earlier than in previous years. So point of entry. If you're entering in pre-K, it begins in March. The process ends in April. Very small window. Kindergarten, they're going to open up in December this year and mid-March. But February, the process ends, and mid-March you'll get your answer. Gifted and talented, it's on right now. You need to put in an application to test your child. Your child can be in kindergarten, first, second, or third grade for testing. If you want your child to enter a G&T program, 4th grade for 5th grade or 5th grade for middle school, there's a different assessment process. And they have to have proof of some type of testing or assessment that occurred otherwise, or they were participating in a gifted and talented program in another state. And it's a big review process once you're in 4th and 5th grade. It's not just the testing. It's not testing. Over-the-counter registration begins in late August. That's the citywide registration and enrollment process. So registration, you're bringing documents, you're bringing the child, and enrollment, you're actually completing the forms so that you can acquire a seat and your child can be admitted. It usually happens like the third week in August to about the second week in September, and there are various sites across the city that you can find out on P311. They'll have it on the New York City Schools website. Middle school, really, and high school, those processes start in September. In high school, you've already had the citywide high school fair in September. It's usually always the third weekend in September, third or fourth, on Saturdays and Sundays. Middle schools, same thing. You've already, by October, you pretty much run into the borough-wide and district-wide fairs. So district-wide fairs for middle school, borough-wide high school fairs going on, I think, last weekend. And your applications have to be in by December 1st, generally. Wow, here we go. New York City public schools, system navigation. Very briefly, I think this is our last section before we take a coffee break. Here is a link on schools.nyc.gov. And this tells you all the offices and programs that exist. And so you can see academic standards, adult and continuing education. I want to encourage all parents to take a look at this site. There's some wonderful resources for adults. If you want to learn English as a second language, they have an LPN nursing program through adult and continuing ed. Some of the older high school students who've left after age 17, high school equivalency, they have a lot of information here in adult education. Let's go back. You have the Board of Education Retirement System, Fair Student Funding, Office of the Chancellor, Chancellor's Regulations, class size reports, community superintendents, and community school district offices. If you're ever looking, you can just type in superintendents here, or community high schools. The family support coordinators, that's an interesting role. We had the district family advocates, and now you have coordinators and liaisons. Here are all the superintendents for each school district in the city. You can see the name, you have their email address, and their family support coordinator. So now in each superintendent's office, you have an additional person who can really kind of help out, and the family advocate. So you have one person for complaints, and you have one person who's kind of going out and training the parent coordinators and parents and making sure that things are going well with information and the parent support contacts. So you have a family leadership coordinator to provide information for community and support in the district, PAs, PTAs, Title I. That's what I used to do at the regional level. We called it a parent engagement officer. And so it's very interesting how they're redesigning the system at this point. Okay, how to navigate the New York City public school system. We've kind of been working on that all along. That's why I've been dropping into the schools.nyc.gov website, so you can kind of become more familiar with navigating that site, with really getting around and seeing what information is there. Parents and students need to know how to navigate the public school system, especially students who are 17 and older. Because at that particular point, and especially at 18, you're kind of there on your own. And your parents are kind of saying, hey, you need to find the resource, find the program that you need in order to complete your high school studies. You know, students need to understand the system also, especially as they move towards middle school and high school, and who to speak to: the guidance counselor, the assistant principal of special education, the assistant principal of guidance. Different schools have different configurations. What are we looking at? We're looking at the system as a whole. When you need to know how to navigate before you go or enter your child into the New York City public school system, during, while your child's a student, and even afterwards. Because there are adult education options, you may have to go back to the system. For example, no one, and that's just not here, no school system reissues a high school diploma. If you lose your high school diploma, that's it. The only other thing they'll give you is a certified copy of your transcript. The high school diploma can only be issued once. It's the same in college. You lose your college degree, the paper degree that they give you, it will never be reissued again. And it has to do with authenticity and things of that nature. It's only issued at one point. So you kind of need to know how to navigate the system even into adult life. Where? All 5 boroughs. Why do you need to know how to navigate the system? So you don't get lost. So you don't fall behind. You don't fall into the cracks. So your children don't fall behind or get lost. And how's the best way to navigate? You need to ask questions and then listen to the answers and take names. Now that is the one thing when parents come to me to access my advocacy services and my advisory services, when they start telling me what has transpired for the child, what has brought them to me, they'll say, well, I talked to someone at my child's school, and she puts them on the bus. Well, what's her name? They have no name, not even a first name. You have to begin keeping your logbook. Date, time, person with whom you spoke, their email address, and their telephone number. Especially if there's an ongoing or ensuing issue with your child. Your child's not getting along with 1 or 2 particular students and incidents keep flaring up. You need to keep your own log, because you better believe it, the New York City Department of Ed is keeping their log. Whether it's general education services, special education services, there are logs, attendance logs, there are logs maintained all the time. So you need to have your notes. Important offices, business and administration office is located at 65 Court Street. 131 Livingston, that's pretty much where the impartial hearings are held. There's still an organizational base there, but all the business and administration is transpired at 65 Court Street in Brooklyn. Policies, procedures, regulations, 52 Chambers Street, that's that Tweed Courthouse, that's where the Chancellor is, that's where you'll find most of the chief executive officers and directors. And then 49 Chambers Street, that's the headquarters for family and community engagement. It's right across the street from 52 Chambers, and that's where your parent and family and community activities and leadership is. And then you have facilities, transportation, school meals, construction. All that's out in Long Island City. The framework. You kind of have to understand how this whole system is being built, because it is really about the business and administration of public education. Public education, sorry, needed some water there. Public education cannot exist in the 21st century, nor did it exist even in the 1920s and 30s, without contracts and an organization. If you think about it, think about where your child's in school right now. There's a contract for everything. There's a contract for the toilet paper. There's a contract for the school meals. There are contracts for teachers. There are contracts for paraprofessionals. There are contracts for the building engineers and the firemen who stoke the boilers. There are contracts for principals, for administrators. There are contracts everywhere. And you have to have an organizational framework in which to deal with these contracts. Because should any of these contracts fail at any particular time, that means that it's interrupting the education of our children. And so contracts are very huge in running a school system this large with approximately 1 million students. So, what used to be known as Office of Student Enrollment, which still departmentally it exists, are family welcome centers. We got Brooklyn there, we got the Bronx, we got Manhattan, even though it says Illinois, there's a Manhattan in New York and Illinois in several places. Staten Island Ferry picture there. And how about those Mets, people? Yeah, World Series. That's where they're going. But there are welcome centers in all 5 boroughs. They pretty much have stayed the same, even though they've gone to a borough operation center organizational structure. In Manhattan, you're still at 388 West 125th Street and 333 7th Avenue. In the Bronx, you're still at 1 Fordham Plaza, 1230 Zariga Avenue, Staten Island. I know that Brooklyn and Queens. Brooklyn has 4 offices, and Queens has quite a number of offices also. But they can be accessed on the schools.nyc.gov website. There are 32 community school districts. Each one has a superintendent. We just looked at that. This is older from last year's boot camp, but they're calling it a different name. But you have a district family advocate, and now you have that liaison that we just read about. District 75 has a superintendent. District 79, that's where your adult education is. That's where your high school equivalency programming programs are. Your alternative programs are in District 79. You have the Office of Charter Schools, and boy, they keep creating those schools under school choice options. We have to offer, New York City has to create more school choice options. That's how we got the waiver on the No Child Left. So, several years ago, when No Child Left Behind started, the mandates was that not to train who were eligible. So for eligibility, you scored level 1 on the state exams, the ELA and math. You received free lunch, so there was a socioeconomic component to it. And so there was a priority and there were transfers made. But it overwhelms the system. So the United States Department of Education a few years back created opportunities for states to come in and ask for waivers under No Child Left Behind if they promised to create greater school choice options in their school districts. New York City is participating in that, and our choice options happen to be charter schools, and that's why you see the charter schools growing so much. You have administrative districts, and those are the directors and CEOs. When we went through the departments before, those are the administrators. And now we have borough operation centers, which are really going back to those family welcome centers. But at the borough operation centers, they're handling the finances per borough and that kind of thing. Can everyone hear? I know that the mic is acting up, so we're going to try to make sure that we're plugged in here. All right, so we're back. Where does the money come from that funds New York City Public Schools? So from last year's boot camp for the 2014-2015 school year that just ended June 30th, the DOE's total budget was $25.9 billion. That's a lot of money. You got 1 million kids. So, including $5.3 billion to pay pensions and interest on capital plan debt. So when you're trying to build new schools and you're trying to refurbish schools and make them fully accessible and functional, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to add a lift, an elevator, to refurbish this, new roofs, all of that. That's capital plan. We're building new things. Pensions, well, you know, that's for all of the workers. It's written into their contracts, into their employment agreements, and we pay a lot of money in pensions. In New York City, you have a lot of teachers and administrators and paraprofessionals, and that's the way that kind of works. The department's $20.6 billion operating budget includes funding for principals, teachers, textbooks, and supplies. See, all of these are contracts. Standardized tests, you have to purchase the test. Those ELA exams and the math exams and the Regents exams, those have to be purchased. After school programming, school busing. School busing takes up a very large amount of money. It's transportation's very expensive. You're paying for gas, you're paying for drivers, you're paying for vehicles, maintenance of vehicles, sheltering of vehicles. It's a very large bite. Heating and cooling systems. Sorry, we'll go back. Heating and cooling for school buildings. Safety. School safety officers and school lunches, and central administration and field support offices, which are those family welcome centers that you go to. There are a number of offices that are just out in the field. They're not at 52 Chambers Street. So, the budget for this year. Here's another one of my little, what would you call, research pieces that I do every year. You always have to learn how to follow the money. When you follow the money, you can figure out where the funding's coming from, the source, and where the money's going to, the uses, sources and uses. It's an accounting thing. So this is the Fair Student Funding and School Budget Resource Guide for fiscal year 2016. Okay. And you can see from the table of contents, they have their process and planning, how these things kind of go about, the Department of Education's overall budget, how are school budgets funded, that kind of thing. Fair student funding background. Let's go down. We're going to scroll down a little bit. Introduction. As Chancellor Farina announced in January, we are launching the Strong Schools, Strong Communities model for the school year 2015-16. So that's what we're doing now. That's what you're working with now. That kind of thing. So they've created to ensure this model is created to ensure that every New York City public school student graduates prepared for college, career, and independent living. And independent living is very important, moms and dads. I've been a parent for 30 years. You love your child when they're young. You love their child when they're young and everything's cute and cuddly. But then they go into adolescence and they're starting to individuate. They're starting to become their own person. No, I don't need you to tell me what I need to wear to school today. And I like to make some of my own choices. But of course, what goes into independent living is having the ability to maintain what I call the 5 pillars: food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, and education. And I've told my children that so many times, and I'm sure that they can attest to that. But that's what you need to survive. What you need to thrive, a step above that, what you need to thrive, meaning a step above that, what you need to thrive. Sorry if you can't hear me now. What you need to thrive for a step above that is the ability to put those 5 pillars together and make them work for you for independent living. So they created a framework where student achievement is the center and trust is the outer ring. Very interesting. Rigorous instruction, collaborative teachers, supportive environment, strong family community ties. So we're hoping, it sounds good. It always sounds great on paper. And we're hoping that staff and communities and parents and students can work together and strengthen this educational process in New York City. So, school quality grades, they're kind of shifting those. They had the targets, percent of students earning 10 credits in the first year. So when you're in high school, to get to those 44 credits, you kind of have to keep pace a certain way. So in freshman year, you need to earn 10 or more credits so that you stay on track with your cohort, with your group that you entered with. So if you have a high school student who only earned 5 credits in freshman year, they're going to have to do some credit recovery. But generally, summer school is held aside and mandated in high school for students who are the 12th graders and who need to graduate that August, and then the children who are entering 12th grade that September so that they can graduate on time. So there are different priorities once you get to high school in this whole thing. But it begins with starting on track in pre-K and K. And anytime that you see that there's a gap in your child's education or their social development or your communication with the school, you need to address it, and not aggressively necessarily, but assertively. You need to notice certain patterns of behavior in your child when they're coming home, things of that nature. It says families, one approach on these principles, families have one place to call if they cannot resolve problems at the school. That's your P311. You call 311. They'll give you a service number once you file your concern or complaint, that kind of things. School leaders need to maintain independence over the budget and human resources, so that they can do what's right for their particular school building, facility, their cohort of students. It's not a cookie cutter kind of one size fits all. So with that being said, they want to provide one-stop support to school leaders. That's why we've kind of gone back to the Borough Operations Center, the whole concept of the Operations Center. So any school in Manhattan can reach out to that Borough Support Operations Center at 333 7th Avenue. I'm having trouble accessing my budget and Galaxy. I'm having all of these issues. So it's important. It's important. But what I wanted to get down here to show you is getting to, so you have borough field support centers, you have the superintendents, you have school leadership teams. So all of these folks are working together to make sure. Here's how our school budget's funded. Here are the categories: fair student funding. You have programmatic allocations for certain programs, and then there are categorical funds. And we're going to get into that just a little bit. State and federal categorical programs. That covers IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Universal Pre-K, AIDP, Attendance Improvement and Dropout Prevention. These are externally restricted programs. You can only use this money for these things, nothing else. You have contracts for excellence funds that comes from the state to increase New York City funding. But the phase-in has not been realized, and so we're still coming up short with some of the monies. Then there are programs, startup funds for pre-Ks, things of that nature. There are other special education funds that pay for mandated special education support that supplements the classroom instructions. So strong schools, strong communities support. Let's keep on rolling. I want to get you to the dollars of fair student funding. So you see all these documents are there. So here, for this school year, foundation money. Every school in the city gets $225,000 just allocated. That's your foundation money. So you can operate, you can order a few things that you need until all these other monies pass through to you. Now there's some monies that you can't use until you use. They're there in your account, but until you actually assign it an object that you're going to purchase, that kind of thing. So the foundation per school. Everyone, all schools get who are receiving fair student funding, regardless of registers or type, will receive a lump sum foundation. But they, that helps them deal with their administrative staff and things of that nature. Grade level. So here's the interesting part, and then we're going to move it. Kindergarten through 5th grade. Every student gets $4,104.38 allocated to them. In middle school, you see, grades 6 through 8, it goes up, $4,433 per student. And in high school, $4,227. So isn't that interesting? We need more money in the middle school than at the high school level. And well, we have high student mobility here in New York City. So many of the students will finish middle school here and they'll go, or their parents have to move because of employment, or they'll go to a different high school or a private high school. But also in high school, you have a larger number of students. So I can have a larger number of students in the class. I can allocate my resources a little differently. So then added on to these base numbers are these numbers that deal with academic intervention funds. Then for English language learners, you add this on top of that, right? Special education. Then here's some monies that are going to be added on top of that for the funding. And then you have portfolio schools. We have nursing programs now. They require extra funds because you have to have certain people who are certified in order to teach them in these technical and trade areas. Okay? So here's the per capita, and then those other funds are added on as needed. In special education, the money follows the child. School Choice Processes Part 2. Gifted and Talented 2016. The request for testing, RFT, period is now open until from now until November 9th. And you can submit your testing request online. So if you're interested in having your child tested for gifted and talented admissions, you have to do it between now and November 9th. So you have about 2 more weeks to go. Now, it's interesting, the gifted and talented testing probably has some kind of value, and anyone can correct me and feel free, but I would estimate anywhere between $1,800 and $3,000. That type of testing that you're receiving has if you were to get that type of testing outside of the New York City Department of Education, it would run you somewhere in there. And so it's very interesting when you get the results back. I've had some parents discuss with me, oh, well, my child scored within the 84th percentile. Well, hey, he didn't make the 90th percentile, which is the cutoff you need in order to be eligible to attend a district gifted and talented program, and they didn't make the 97th or above percentile cutoff to be eligible to apply to attend a citywide G&T. But 84th percentile is very strong, as percentiles are different from percentages. Anything at the 50th percentile and above, 50th percentile is average. So whenever you're reading certain kinds of documents, even if they're reports related to your child's IEP, testing that you've had done, psychoeducational testing, percentiles are a little different. Now, if you score 50% on an exam, no, you have not passed that exam. You know, generally 65% or above is considered passing. However, percentiles equate a little differently. So if your child is at the 50th percentile and above, they are on level with their peers and above. If your child scores in the 48th percentile on a particular assessment or test, not bad. You're still within that normal range, so-called normal. So you have to begin to understand what's being measured in all of these tests and what the actual results mean with regards to teaching and instruction for your child. So if you're interested in G&T and in applying, it's good. Some kids respond well to ongoing testing. A lot of kids have test anxiety. So you just have to look out for that as a parent. I put my youngest child through a lot of testing to enter private school programs and boarding school programs. You have to take certain exams to go to what we call independent schools here in New York City, Manhattan Country Day, Ethical Fieldston, Horace Mann. You have to take a specific type of test. And they're looking for your kids to score in a specific percentile. But some kids handle testing really well, 3 hours of something, and some children simply do not. So again, For those parents who are in 8th grade, their children are in 8th grade, when you're looking at the high school, maybe you need to go to one of those coalition of 100 essential schools. So they're only doing the English and the math regents, and they're doing portfolio assessments or performance-based assessments for the other things, so that they don't have to take the regents exams in those classes. You really need to begin to learn your child's strengths. You need to be responsive when they're coming home and they're telling you certain information. I don't want to participate. I don't want to do this. And you can't be dissuaded when you get certain test results and reports home. And one of my children, and I'm not going to identify which one, took the G&T exam in kindergarten many years ago. And it was different than it is right now, but still. And that child did not even complete half of that exam. However, that child took it again in 1st grade for a 2nd grade placement, and that child missed one question on that exam. So when children are younger, and even into middle school and high school, but especially pre-K, all the way to grade 5, every 6 months, every 3 months, they're growing and developing. And so what they couldn't do 3 months ago, just as if with a baby or an infant, they can do much better 3 to 6 months later. So that's my take on that, G&T. So again, the types of public schools we talked about: zoned, non-zoned, district, community schools, citywide gifted and talented, specialized high schools. Now that exam should be given coming up in November. 8th graders, current 8th graders, and current 9th graders are eligible to request a ticket to sit for the specialized high school exam, and they receive that ticket from their current school's guidance counselor. That's it. That's all. And done. And they actually enter it into a database, and it asks you basic information: name, address, a telephone number, that kind of thing. But you need, in quotes, I'm putting in quotations and air quotes, you need a ticket in order to sit for that exam, and it's coming up. If you don't sit for it in 8th grade, you can sit for it in 9th grade. Many parents pay their children to have their children tutored, or put them in like Kaplan Prep for New York City Specialized High School. You'll go to Barnes and Nobles and buy the books. But what parents keep missing is you have to do that. You can't buy that book 3 months before the exam. You kind of have to understand the kids who are taking the specialized high school test, that's really like a gifted and talented high school. And oddly enough, but not so, gifted and talented resources fall under the special education resources, under IDEA. Because children who are in the 90th percentile and above intellectually are actually what we call, air quotes again, exceptional. That's the exceptional child. So not only could you be exceptional on the other end of the intelligence quotient, the IQ spectrum, and be struggling and challenged with reading, writing, calculating, you can be extremely gifted. But on both ends of those spectrums, it's usually a small group of people. Small group of people. Only about 3% of the world's population is truly, truly intellectually gifted, full-scale IQ above 137. Truly. And there are disabilities and challenges and conditions that are very complex, but only about 3% of the population of students are actually diagnosed with those. We call those low incidence, categories. They're on either end. They're on the either extreme of the spectrum. Most kids fall right in the middle, somewhere average, low average, high average, right in between. So, middle school choice. This goes for high school choice also. You parents who are doing middle school choice, your middle school choice application will have your child's final 4th grade report card. You're applying for middle school, and this is for younger parents. You apply for middle school in grade 5. right now in fall of grade 5. So since there are no grades right now, the pre-populated, meaning your application is going to come already with your child's name, with their test scores from grade 4, with their final grades of their report card from grade 4, and all of the schools that they're eligible to apply for. That's what their middle school application is going to look like. So it's very important, parents of pre-K, K, first, second, and third graders. Fourth grade scores can be a big determinant of middle school placement. So on those middle school applications, parents, and high school also, never put down a school you can't live with. It was inevitable in enrollment that after the middle school matches come back, the high school matches come back, I don't want that school. You go in the computer and look, and the parent has put that school as number 2. Well, if you didn't want that school and you didn't want to be matched to that school, do not put it on the form. You have to be realistic about the choice of program. I'd get parents, the 8th grade parents, as they're going through and trying to navigate this high school choice process. I'm about to have my child sit for the specialized high school exam, and they get them all excited about that. That's another one of those exams that's the gift, like gifted and talented. Okay, you can sit for it. We want to encourage minority students, ethnic minority students. We need more of that enrollment there in those schools. But again, if you haven't laid the groundwork for that child to do it, you've got the focus on the wrong thing. It's an outside chance you're going to score in the 90th percentile and above if you haven't scored in the 90th percentile and above kindergarten through 7th grade. It's a good experience to take the exam because sometimes children transfer here, they come here from other countries, they've never been formally assessed for their giftedness, and lo and behold, there it is. There it absolutely is. So I'm not discouraging parents from having their children take the exam, but don't get turned around. Be realistic. If your child's really great in art and has won some awards, then high school for art and design might be for them. You have to bring a portfolio in order to audition or to interview. If you're at LaGuardia and it's dance or it's theater, professional performing arts school, your children are competing against kids who have been doing this, has been an interest of theirs since they were younger. Kids who are making commercials. We always had a lot of Lion King kids who are in plays on Broadway, who are going to school. And your child could be truly talented and gifted in that performing arts area, whatever athletically. But remember, when you start getting to middle school choice, you're looking beyond your local community school. You're looking at a whole district of kids who are applying. And when you're looking at high school choice, you're looking at a whole city that's applying. So check your child's 7th grade attendance record for errors. Now, it doesn't have to do with middle school choice, but it's prepping middle school parents for high school choice. Because just as the 4th grade report card can be the determinant in your middle school placement, your 7th grade report card is the determinant in your high school placement. 5th grade public school students must participate in middle school admissions. So any child who is on the register for grade 5, that computer is going to generate a middle school application for that student. All 5th graders currently enrolled in a New York City public elementary school receive a customized middle school application. That's what I was telling you. It's pre-populated. It has your child's name, address, the schools that they're eligible to apply for. But remember, there's some non-zone schools out there that have applications. So you have to go through the directories of different districts and look to see if they have any non-zoned middle school programs that you could apply to. The application will include all the middle schools to which each student is eligible to apply. To complete the application, students rank schools in preference order and return the application to their school. So again, do not rank a school that you are not interested in attending. High school choice, very similar. You have high school programs that are audition programs, that are screened programs. You have educational option programs. There's test schools that you have to test into, like the specialized high school. You have high school programs that are screened for language, and it's based on language proficiency. So you'll see some bilingual high schools, like Gregorio Luperone High School in Washington Heights, Inwood. But for grade 9, and let me pull out my high school directory. I have one right here. In grade 9, admissions for Gregorio Luperone, it tells you we have a bilingual Spanish, science, and mathematics program. But under admissions priorities, it says priority to Manhattan students or residents who have lived in the United States 2 years or fewer and whose home language is Spanish. And inevitably, there is an English dominant, lived in the United States for 15 years student or family that puts this school on their application. But you see where the priorities are. So then you have limited unscreened programs. The priority to admissions is given to those who attend an information session. So parents who are doing high school choice, you need to have that directory out. You need to kind of look at each program name, program description, and selection criteria. You need to reach out to the parent coordinator at the school or go to the school's website. Same for middle school. When did they have the open house? Have you already attended? Many parents have already gone to an information session or attended. And they have zoned high schools that are based on residence. There's a very popular high school, I think Midwood, that many people ask about. Is that in Brooklyn, for all my Brooklyn families that are out there? But parents used to ask a lot about Midwood High School. But they have certain programs that are only open to students who reside in their geographical catchment area, which we're calling a zone. That's what a zone is, a geographical catchment. And you have unscreened schools, which are just, they're random. They just pick the students randomly based upon, there's an algorithm. There's a lot of technological stuff that goes into the running of the application. But one thing, before I go back, with the screen schools, generally the screen schools, you say like Beacon High School or Eleanor Roosevelt High School in Manhattan or Millennium High School, they'll tell you they want course grades. English 85 to 100, math 85 to 100. They're talking about your 7th grade scores for high school. Standardized test scores in English language arts, they want a 3.0 to a 4.5. That's on the Common Core ELA now. That's where those scores are. They look at attendance and punctuality, and then you have to have an interview, and sometimes you have to bring your portfolio. Now, in schools that are primarily college prep high schools, they'll want to see a sampling of the child's middle school English work, where it has teachers' comments, and it has a letter grade on it. So don't throw away your children's paperwork, younger parents. While your child, if you have a grade 6 child now, you keep a few samples at the end of the school year from grade 6. And then when they get in grade 7, you keep a few samples of English, math, science, and history, each of the core subjects, so that you can show in the portfolio for high school admissions, I've seen growth. So you may even put in grade 6, he had an English paper that had a grade of 67. But through summer school or some tutoring or summer program, by the end of grade 7, that same student was writing a stellar essay at 90. Well, you want to show a high school that growth. Don't be ashamed or afraid of the lower grades. Hold on to those papers, not just the A-level papers. Hold on to the papers that have teachers' comments and have letter or numerical grades for the high school process. Alrighty, the calendar, November, the specialized high school test, LaGuardia auditions. If you want to audition for LaGuardia High School, you have to get the ticket, in quotes, air quotes, from the guidance counselor. December, Submit an application to the guidance counselor, GC. Make a copy of it. Ask for a receipt. It's a computerized thing. They can give it to you. In January, you're going to continue with your interviews. There may be testing like at Bard High School or assessments. And in February, the matching begins. In March, the first round responses are generally issued, and then they have a round 2 fair because they're constantly creating school choice options. So there are going to be a few new high schools opened every year, each year that this happens. And so there'll be a round 2. If there's a new high school that piques your fancy, then you can kind of go in there to round 2. If you're matched in round 2, you lose that round 1 seat. So you have to be very careful about what you're accepting and what you're not. And generally by the end of May, they like to have the final results. If you get your high school match and you do not like the match, you can appeal. But generally, appeals are because there's some, in my opinion, appeals should be granted in the high school areas when there's some new information that has come up between January and May. So when I filled out my high school application December 1st and submitted it, I wasn't diagnosed with something. And now it's May and I've received a choice, and actually this school is too large and I've been diagnosed with social anxiety, or a student's been diagnosed with social anxiety. Well, no, I don't want to send a student necessarily that's been diagnosed with social anxiety in March, that spring, to a school that has 22,000 students. I want to send that child to a student that may have, to a school that may have a similar, size. That's what I think appeals are about. There are always the travel issues. They've moved the travel amount for high schools now to 1 hour and 15 minutes because everyone has to commute in New York. It can take you 2.5 hours. It takes me 2.5, 3 hours to get from the first stop here in the Bronx on the D train to the last stop at Coney Island. So commuting is an issue here. You need to start travel training your kids in middle school. I usually start even in elementary school with walking the community, just in case your kids get lost in the park or someplace local. Then I graduated the kids from doing the walk around or walking long distances or different routes in our community to taking a bus a short period of time to the mall, to the grocery store, even if you're driving. And you may not like the New York City public transportation system, but kids need to know how to use it, even if you're a driver, even if you're going to drop them off at high school every day. They need that to move towards independence and independent living. They need to be able to control how they move, not to feel lost, not to feel the anxiety of being lost. And I think that's something that parents miss oftentimes with this high school piece. So you're sending a student from the Bronx deep into Queens. It's a great school, but you didn't travel train them. You took them on the train 2 or 3 times the first week of school. But still, they haven't made any friends yet, and they're still getting lost. That kind of thing. And I have to say, something happened 2 years ago. I was taking the train when I was working at 65 Court Street from the Bronx, and I was sitting next to a student. I knew she was a student. I didn't know she was a New York City public school student. There was a terrible delay on the D train, and we were there in between a tunnel or something for about 25 or 30 minutes, and she began to have an anxiety attack. And she was sitting right next to me. So I pulled out my ID. I explained to her that I worked for the New York City Department of Education, and is there any way that we can help her? I always ride in the train that holds the conductor's car, because the conductor has the key. Some trains you can't move back and forth from car to car. You can move back and forth between the cars on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And maybe a couple of other trains I'm just not aware of at this time. I haven't been on the L train in a while. But on the larger trains that have the longer routes, the A, the D, some E-trains, some. You can't egress. You can't move out of that car, and when it's very crowded and it's rush hour. But myself and a couple of other women who were there, we were able to wrap around her to assure her. We finally got into a station. We got her out to the platform. I contacted the school principal. They contacted her parents. But I'm just saying that travel is tough. You know, travel is really, really tough for kids. And it can cause a great amount of anxiety in New York City. And you just have to be aware of that, parents. I digress. All right. Last little hit before we take a 10-minute coffee break. Lunch break at this particular point, I guess. Sorry for the delay again, folks. Pre-K and kindergarten choice. My pre-K parents. I know you're out there. You've sent some questions in. Available pre-K seats. It's tough in that pre-K world. You can choose any pre-K program, any borough in the city. And so that's very interesting. Can I get a wait list? Can I get on a wait list for a program I didn't apply for? You may directly contact programs from the main round and request to be added to the wait list. Round 2 program wait list opened on August 24th. Am I guaranteed an offer to my first choice program? No. If you don't receive an offer to your first choice program, you will be placed on a wait list. So, dual language pre-K programs, and we went to this site before, so we talked about that. But your pre-K parents, you need to think. I remember when I was a young parent, and my friends who were young parents at the time, we wondered if you could actually, was it better to send your child to an in quote so-called good school that was down near where you worked, or to stay in a school in your community? And so we kind of all went back and forth with that. Oh, if I have my child close to me where I work, in case of emergency, I can get there. However, if you don't go into work, how does that child get to school that day? But also, if you're working 2 boroughs away, or I have a 2-borough commute, and I've left my child in the Northeast Bronx, and I'm in Brooklyn, I'm in downtown Brooklyn, that can be a source of anxiety too for a family. So as you're making these pre-K and kindergarten choices, and you're saying, oh, I want them close to where I work, or I want them here at the house, it's about creating a team for yourself now. So whether your child's in pre-K or kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, or high school, on their way to college, you still need a team. That means a consultant, a pediatrician, the school guidance counselor can be on your team. You have to create a team as a parent of go-to people that you can seek counsel from. I found that, and again, my 30 years of parenting, that's been very important. And again, the kindergarten news. Applications open in December. For my parents of kids who are dealing with the committee for preschool special education, I have a little something for you that will come up later. Now here we go. Bilingual program and introducing that new acronym, ENL, English as a New Language. And so there are a couple of ways to look at this. Dual language programs teach part of the school week in English and part of the school week in the language of the dual language program. So here, dual language, this first one, PS20, dual language program, Chinese is the language. So maybe the way they're set up, 3 days a week, the classes are held in English. 2 days a week, the classes are held in Chinese. Now, what I understand from dual language educators is we don't repeat work during the English days that we did in Chinese. We're still moving forward. We're just moving forward in English. So kind of remember that, parents, when you're looking at, it seems to be the hot ticket. You want kids to be bilingual, trilingual, early language immersion, right? But in a dual language program, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm teaching in English. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm teaching in Chinese or Spanish. And I'm not going back over the work in the other language. It's to build that duality and that strength. The transitional bilingual education programs for newcomers, for those who English is a brand new language. There are other people, because there are different phases of language ability and development. Like it generally takes 2 years to develop what we call conversational language. So if I'm coming from France and I'm coming to New York City public schools and I'm put in a transitional bilingual education program, I don't see any here in French as of yet, just Spanish, Yiddish. Let's see what else we have. French here. Um, that might be an option. The child will be able to get maybe 2 or 3 days of English language instruction, or and then the 2 days in actual French. But in the transitional program, usually it takes about 2 years of bilingual education or ESL to get the conversational. It takes another 3 years to actually learn the technical language of education for the student. And see, that's the thing. When you are in middle school and absolutely into high school, there is a technical language to chemistry, to geometry, to physics, to biology. So you spend in your elementary time learning conversational and dealing with the elementary school level work. But once you get into high school, there is another level of technical language. And some have even said that it goes on for another 2 years. In that regard. So it's really kind of like a 7-year development program that you really, as a newcomer or English as a new language, in developing the mastery. Whew. Well, we're going to take a coffee break right now, and about 10 minutes. Right now I have the time as 12:51. Gonna come back. Probably will take a few more minutes. 9 minutes would be 1 o'clock. I'll come back at about 1:05, if that's okay with everybody. And then we're going to swing into special education. Actually, I'm going to say 1:15, to be perfectly honest. I need to take a restroom break also. We're going to come back at 1:15. We're going to work on special education. I have the ABCs of the IEP presentation to share with you. And again, you can post up any questions that you may have. And then we're going to just have a very short conclusion, how to survive and thrive in New York City public schools. And we'll look at emergency preparedness for families, because we also have those plans in the public school system. I'll be back in 10. Thank you so much for being so patient and for joining us this afternoon. back with the tech team. Are we back, tech? We're back streaming. Well, welcome back, everyone. It's Hazel Adams-Shango, founder and CEO of BeingSpecialNYC.com, and advocate of choice, an independent education advisory service for New York City public and charter school parents. We're winding down to the end of our fall parent boot camp presentation, and we are moving into the area of special education. And so for this area, I just have a couple of slides to show you here, and then I'm going to switch over to a presentation that I created last fall called the ABCs of the IEP. And I created that in coordination with the East Harlem tutorial program, who asked me to come and speak to their parents last fall. And they had a wonderful, wonderful director there and the program social worker, and they were able to translate that presentation into Spanish. So again, just to bring you forward, if you're just tuning in, on our website, BeingSpecialNYC.com, we are working to create a new platform for e-learning modules for parents. There'll be downloadable videos and PDFs, and so that you can watch and learn at your own pace, your own time about the New York City public school system, and 24 hours a day, 365. We had a bit of a technical difficulty this morning, and we got a pretty late start, and that's why we're going into the afternoon. But after this presentation, we just have a couple of resources and links for you, and we are done. So let's get started. Special education programs and services. As I've been doing in the earlier part of this webinar, we're linking into the schools.nyc.gov website. This is the section of the website that tells you a lot more about the committees for special education and preschool special education, the impartial hearing process when you are dissatisfied with a particular program, specialized instruction, the special education hotline, 718-935-2007 for the New York City Department of Education, or you can dial 311. They also have a website, Special Education, at schools.nyc.gov if you're experiencing any issues with your child at this particular point. Also, in the center, there's a Citywide Council on Special Education, the CCSE, and the Citywide District 75 Council. English language learners, they talk about special education reform here, related services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language therapy, special education transportation issues, and also transitioning to kindergarten, which really deals with that turning 5 process for parents. And we've looked at this page a little earlier in our presentation. Children born in 2010 will start kindergarten in fall of 2015. So children born in 2011 will start kindergarten in fall of 2016. So if your child is currently receiving services under the Committee for Preschool Education, or you're just planning to do general kindergarten enrollment, now is your time to start visiting and looking and that kind of thing. So it's really interesting that they have acronyms and the glossary here on the website. They talk about accommodations, alternate learning center, alternate placement. This is a really good place to get definitions and a better understanding of some of the things that you'll see on your child's individualized education plan, a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, a plan to address problem behavior that includes, as appropriate, positive behavioral intervention, strategies and supports, bilingual instruction, classroom observation. And so the glossary is a really good place to look. I'll show you again. If you just go to the schools.nyc.com, you can type in special education and it will show you or result in a pathway that will lead you to this page. So moving forward, we're still sticking with the who, what, when, where, why, and how methodology. Who, the ABCs of the IEP are for all parents. Don't think or don't turn away or tune away and think that you don't have to kind of at least listen to part of this presentation just because your child hasn't been identified as having any type of diverse learning needs, any type of physical condition or emotional or behavioral condition that might fall within the 13 categories covered by the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, because your child and an adult, anyone, can become disabled at any point in their lifetime. So it's kind of important to listen to things through this process as you as you go through this process, because if you have a kindergarten student, you need to know about middle school because middle school is right around the corner for you. If you are a middle school parent, you need to know about high school. If you are a parent that doesn't have special needs, then you need to know about resources for children that may have access or functional. You see them working along the screen. Again, this is our first webinar. It's a new process for me. I'm working remotely with some other individuals, and that's kind of what we're doing here. And I'd really like to be able to get in there and start the ABCs of the IEP. Just waiting to hear from the tech team, but I'm kind of going to keep speaking and praying for the best. How do you begin to understand the depth of this topic? It's wide and long. You have to work and study. You find mentors and other parents who've already gone through the situation. You find camaraderie with other parents and as your peers, other parents that are in your child's program. And also you have to surround yourself with some very positive professionals. I've been able to just sit at the feet of some very wonderful health providers and that have been able to help my children throughout, and clinical psychologist, or if you're a social worker, a great pediatrician, developmental pediatrician. And so now we're going to take a look at the ABCs of the IEP. We're going to do some switching around here and see if we can get you to the presentation. And here we go. As I stated, I created this presentation last October, exactly almost a year ago, in conjunction and in collaboration with the East Harlem Tutorial Program. And so the IEP process, the Individualized Education Plan, is a tool that's used by schools to ensure that children with special educational needs, we'll call them diverse learning needs, we're changing up the language now as we're moving through the presentation, who receive, so that they can receive the services they require under the law. And the law that we're speaking about is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which really started way back with Public Law 94-142, the Education of All Handicapped Children Act, and that was passed in June 30th, 1975. So for all intents and purposes, special education is still a rather young process, very early. It hasn't even been around maybe just 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015. 40 years that formally a law on the books has been in place to address the needs of public education as they serve the children of the United States. It's always moving to me when I read that law, that 94-142 Education of All Handicapped Students Act, and it always moved me when Congress writes a law or passes a law, they put an introduction and a commentary in the front. And prior to 1975, June 30th, 1975, it was estimated that over 1 million children did not attend school because they had a disability and the school was unable to address their disability needs. It's very important for parents to understand the IEP process in order for them to do the following: help their child achieve their school goals, monitor their child's progress in school. That when they're in a room full of children who are playing with their individual toys, is it that your child consistently plays alone? It could be, and that could just be that your child has a very quiet personality, or it could be the early signs of something. Most certainly, when you're thinking about child development over the ages from birth up to age 18 or 21, there are certain stages and phases of child development that it's thought that most children reach at a certain time. Not all children are walking by 9 months of age. Not all children are potty trained by 2.5. But certainly, if your child is not potty trained by the age of 4, there's some underlying concerns. They could be physiological, dealing with the body. It could be a developmental delay. It certainly is at that particular point. And that's kind of some of the telltale signs that we look at. A school representative, it could be a teacher, a social worker, a school psychologist, or school guidance counselor. It could even be you, the parent. You request that assistance be given to the student to help overcome these identified difficulties. The issues need to be documented, written down. You always have to keep your notes, parents. Just as you keep a baby book when the child is born and you have a picture of the child as a newborn and you're taking pictures of your children ongoing, and that's very popular now with the technology and everything else that's out there. You need to be documenting certain developmental stages and phases that your children are going through. First time walked, first time talked. Because you'll always be asked those questions by healthcare professionals and sometimes by school professionals such as social workers or school psychologists. And so when a child is in school, you don't necessarily jump to test or to assess or to evaluate right away, but we try to develop a plan of intervention. The student will be observed generally for about 6 to 8 weeks once the plan is put in place to see if this will help. Say, for instance, you have a child who is constantly getting out of their seat. And the teacher is saying it's very difficult for me to manage the student, and she's talking with the school guidance counselor and the school psychologist and the parent. And it's disrupting actually education and the school day. Then we may have the school social worker or the school psychologist come in and observe the student over a period of time and then work on an intervention plan that the teacher can implement, and they would observe. Thereafter, the school team will meet and discuss whether the students have shown improvement with the intervention being in place, or if the students' issues require further study. If the student's issues require further study, a school representative will contact the parent, meet with them to discuss the issues, and request that the parent give their written permission for their child to be formally tested or assessed. After the testing is completed, the school representatives, school psychologists, a general education teacher, a special education teacher, social worker, and any other specialist. It could be an occupational therapist. It could be almost anyone. I can return to full screen now. And at this particular point, they will meet with each other to discuss the results of the testing and assessment and to decide if the student meets the criteria for special education and or related services, which could be the occupational therapy, speech therapy, and or accommodations. You might need all of them. Accommodations such as extra time for tests. For children who have orthopedic impairments, they may need extra time to move from class to class. For students who have a visual challenge, they may need to have preferential seating in the front of the class. And so let's see what we can do to get the full screen showing here. I see. So the team meets with the parents on the initial evaluation, even if the child is not found eligible for services. Sometimes we have concerns about our child's development, and we do go through the testing and assessment process. And it turns out that the child may just be a few months delayed in working on a few activities, daily living activities, but not a year or so behind or 2 years behind. And so even though the testing has been done, they still have to develop a plan and hold that meeting to say what the results of the testing were. And that's very important. If the child is found eligible for services, the team will notify the parent in writing and invite the parent to a meeting where they will discuss the results of the testing and present the reports that outline. So sorry, you guys. We're having these difficulties. Very much so. Um, we've kind of gone through the ABCs of the IEP. I think we're back up. And we're going to try to run the show. So, IEP goals and objectives. During the team meeting, a draft of the IEP, including the goals that they have for your child and the objectives, is written. The goals and objectives are the special points. That's what I call the special points that will be paid attention to by the teacher in order to help the child with schoolwork, social behavior, or any particular school-based challenge or issue. However, the students and the parents also have a role to play in this. In the goal development, in the objective, the difference between goals and objectives. A goal is an observable and measurable end result, meaning you can see and you can count what should happen. An objective is a specific result that a person or a system aims to achieve within a specific time frame. So the student could set up goals. They could have goals for the student, such as, let's take a look at a sample of some goals. So in 1 year, a student could learn strategies to copy paragraphs and they would do it at 4 out of 5 trials. 4 out of 5 trials. So the goal, you can see and you can count what should happen with that student. And then the method, how it'll be measured, it's through classroom activities or teacher observations. And then when are we going to measure the progress? We're going to measure it one time a quarter. We're going to measure it every 4 out of 5 trials. There would be something, but it would definitely be a time frame that you could schedule. So IEP goals and objectives are important to understand because they can tell you what your child needs to work on specifically and the steps that he or she needs to take in order to successfully accomplish their goals. And so that they also could be promoted to the next grade. So now that your child has an IEP, how can you help your child to do their personal best in school? Parents are a child's first advocate. The more you know about your child's condition, disability, or special needs, the more you can inform others about them, and they can help you and help the child. So when you start hearing very large words or dyslexia or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, you need to utilize the resources that you have and use the technology and just start looking up definitions. We did a lot of navigating earlier on in the webinar with using the schools.nyc.gov website. There are other links that I can assist you with. Apparently, we've got just a ton of technical difficulties on this webinar, and we're going to try to wrap it up. But here are 3 things that you can do to advocate on behalf of your child. Number 1, ask the school to print out a copy of your child's IEP in your native language. In your native language. You can use a dictionary or your computer, as I said, if you have to, in order to understand some of these words. Also, number 2, you can learn how to put your concerns in writing. You need to keep a notebook every school year. I have for all 3 of my children. It does create a paper trail of sorts, but it's very helpful to refer back to 1 year later, 2 years later. If you have questions about anything that's going on in your child's school or about his or her